What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Mikey McNuggets, Earl the Pearl, G. Bush. This is an Ultimate Browns Bleacher Report collaboration, and it is working. The connection is synced, guys. We have fixed our rights and our deficiencies from yesterday, and we are here to discuss something that Sean King said on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show today that caught all of our attention. Sean King, former NFL quarterback, won a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers, played in the league for 6 seasons, was a prolific college quarterback. He is firmly planted on the Team Jameis side. So let's just make it very clear before we dive into what he said. He is a Jameis supporter. He believes in Jameis. He might be Jameis's godfather for all we know with the lengths he's gone to defend Jameis, but he's played the position. He knows it better than the three of us. So you take what he says with a grain of salt, mostly on the good side. But today he said something very interesting that had nothing to do with Jameis's play on the field. Sean King came on UCSS and said, there's no way if you bring Jameis back as the bridge quarterback and or the long-term option for the Cleveland Browns, you can't have Deshaun back there too. And I have some pretty strong opinions and thoughts on Sean's comments. G, you were on the show and responded to it in live time. So I want to start with Earl here. Earl, are you agreeing with Sean King that if you do decide to go down the Jameis Winston route at quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, that means Deshaun cannot be in the picture?
I think that's the main reason why we couldn't bring Joe Flacco back last year, right? Is because of the rumors that it will have a negative impact on Deshaun Watson as he go about his business. I think that the Cleveland Browns need to go about this in a totally different direction this time around. I think you need to do what's best for the Cleveland Browns and not what's best for Deshaun Watson. I think everything that you're hearing right now is just formalities, right? I don't think the Cleveland Browns do themselves no favors saying that the plan is to keep Deshaun Watson at home. I think, honestly, they're just going to let him go through the entire rehab process and figure out a way to either put him on IR or send him home paid. In my opinion, I don't think Deshaun Watson is going to be in the Cleveland Browns plans for 2025 for on the field. Do I think he'll be a part of the team? Yes. Do I think he'll be on the roster? Yes. But do I think he'll be as far as like on-field football playing plans? No. I think that Jameis Winston, right, as far as like off the field, there's a lot about Jameis Winston that's attractive, right? So me and Cecil did our first Ultimate 216 show together last week. And I bring that up because Cecil actually played with Jameis Winston, and he talked about, what we see in Jameis is authentically who he is, that natural born leader. He's always been that dude that's first guy off the field, making sure he greets every single player that's entering a locker room. You hear Sean talk about that even when things is going wrong and you see the players on the sideline, they're engaged. We know from the start of this that Jameis, like, he comes with all the pregame speeches, postgame speeches, and, he's a walking quote, right? And he's funny and people enjoy him. But the truth of the matter is his energy is contagious and people are gravitating towards him. And so when you see that and you see the, unlocking of Jerry Jeudy, so to speak, the unlocking of Cedric Tillman, Elijah Moore all of a sudden starting to be productive, David Njoku having a second back half of the season as he did last year, you're starting to look at the impact that he has on the players around him, and you should bring him back. And if that means that you can't have Deshaun Watson in the same room with him and whoever that bridge quarterback might be, then so be it. Because last year you made decisions based on what was best for Deshaun Watson, i.e. firing AVP and getting a new offensive coordinator and not bringing Flacco back. And you see the results of all that. This year, you need to do what's best for the Cleveland Browns.
G, what say you?
This is why I like these little situations over here. You get to hear people talk, and you listen to what they're saying, and ideas start to get floated around your head and pop up. And you know what? I had a totally different take on this before the situation started. But as Earl spoke, I thought about some different things. I thought about how at one point in time, Jameis Winston was a starting quarterback, a number 1 overall pick in this league. And he, flamed out in Tampa Bay. And guess what? He had to learn how to be a backup, had to learn how to be a teammate. He had to learn to be a guy that can contribute to the team other than his skill set on the field. Where he's developing some of the stuff that we're seeing on display, he developed through adversity. He developed through ups and downs and being the number 1 overall pick and seen as a franchise player who happened to be a backup to supporting somebody else, being behind somebody. So, all of that is the maturation. I've seen Sam Darnold have to do that. I've seen Baker Mayfield humbled and have to sit behind people and be let go by the Panthers and then passed over again by the Rams and get to a point right now where he's in Tampa Bay and it came full circle and now he's the leader again. For Deshaun Watson, it'd be a great story. What would it be a great American story for him to say, be humbled by it and say, man, I'm at the lowest part of my career. I just want to be around some guys. I just want to be around people. I want to rehab. I want to get around Jameis Winston. I want to be around football. If he comes and says, hey, look, I lost a lot by sitting out that year and some change. And I learned that, you can't, the game of football don't wait for nobody. And you need to be around the game if you still want to play this game. So for me, I'm willing to take whatever role they got. If it's a backup role, if it's a mentor role, if it's a scout team role, hey, financially I'm secure. I'm just all about playing the game of football, being around the guys and doing what the Cleveland Browns would like me to do. If he says that and comes in and does that, think about it like this, because I'm going to tell you, McNuggets is like, come on, bro, that ain't happening. But what I'm saying to you is this. That's pretty much the way he's going to have to stick in this league, McNuggets. He's going to have to be around the organization to then to redevelop himself and to give a perception of saying, kind of like Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel is around the game of football. He got let go. You got to be in the building and people will say, you know what, Deshaun Watson handled that very well. He likes the game of football. Maybe we'll give him a shot, or maybe he'll do some things like that. The money is already taken care of. Maybe we could do that. But that's, to me, if that was my advice to him, I would say that's the way you need to approach it, because that will lead to possibility of getting another opportunity somewhere else, whether it's a backup role or a role or wherever it's going to be. I just think that's a way to approach it.
Let me ask something before you go, Mike. In your opinion, G, though, do you think Deshaun Watson is built like that to approach the situation that way?
Prior to what I know of him, prior to the injury, I don't think that was his mentality. But I will say injuries at a certain point in time can do a lot for you. Yeah. Like when you're at your lowest and you understand what you need to pivot to. Not hopefully because of the injury, but I'm just giving him that because it's not the same thing as Colin Kaepernick. But Colin Kaepernick, as long as he was out of the league, the longer he was out, it was that much more difficult for him to get in. And my thing is, it's always easy to get a job when you got a job. So if the Browns let him back in the facility and he's going to be there, stay around the game of football. That's my advice.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Earl. I don't know if that's his makeup. I don't know Deshaun. I could be totally wrong. I'm just reading the tea leaves of what I know about him, what I've heard. I can't foresee a world where a guy who voluntarily sat out a year during his prime in Houston is now all of a sudden itching to get back to just being something after all the scrutiny he's been through. And if he wants to take the backup route, that is his best bet to getting back in the league. I just don't think it'll be in Cleveland. It's going to have to be a Russell Wilson situation where they pay him off essentially to go somewhere else. Some other team signs him for nothing. And the reason I think there's a 0.0% chance that Jameis and Watson can exist together next year in a quarterback room. To Earl's point, we know what happened with Flacco. We heard from enough people. He didn't want the competition in the first place. And I'm going to reference a movie I know you guys have both seen. Remember Talladega Nights?
Of course.
Right? So you got Ricky Bobby, who's the number one, and Cal Naughton's number two. And Cal Naughton's the ultimate hype man. Like the ultimate. He would do whatever it took to get Ricky Bobby that dub. And then when Ricky Bobby fell off and Cal got a chance to become the lead driver and win some races, he wasn't handing it back. Like Ricky Bobby had to go take it back from him. And in this case, Jameis was Deshaun's quintessential hype man throughout the offseason. He was brought here to get Deshaun in the right mental state to be able to attack this season at full strength. Didn't pan out. I think Jameis knows he's the better quarterback than Deshaun right now. I think the other 52 players in the locker room know Jameis is the better quarterback than Deshaun Watson right now. I think the other 500 NFL players across the league know Jameis Winston's the better quarterback than Deshaun Watson right now. And it would be organizational malpractice to bring them both back in and put them through some de facto quarterback competition when we already know the outcome. I said it last night. I'll say it again. Deshaun was not good this season. He was coming off shoulder surgery. Now he has to come off a torn Achilles. Look at Kirk Cousins. Look at Aaron Rodgers. You don't get better after a torn Achilles. Like, let's just call it spade a spade. You get worse after that. Deshaun was already arguably the worst starting quarterback in football this season. If he gets worse, how are you going to look at your teammates in the eye and the players on this team and say, we're going to put these through a competition when you know the outcome already? Cal Naughton had to be fought out of that number one spot. Jameis ain't giving it up too easy.
I'll say this too. I'll say this too, because we often look at this from the Cleveland Browns point of view. And to be honest with you, I think it's just best for both sides if they cut ties and move forward, because Deshaun Watson has experienced a lot of scrutiny since he's been the Cleveland Browns quarterback. And who's to say that somewhere in his camp, it's not being told to him, or motivating factors are saying like a fresh start in a new city with a new team can probably do you some justice as well. So I think it's a two-way street here, to where, in my opinion, if both sides decided to cut ties with each other, it could be beneficial for both, because you both are right. Injury do have a tendency to change your attitude and your mindset towards a lot of things. And Deshaun Watson has made a lot of money in his NFL career, not just the $230 he signed with the Cleveland Browns, but you got to think about it. His rookie contract plus the $165 guaranteed he got from the Houston Texans before he demanded a trade. And so it's like the money is there. The bag has been secured. It's about, at this point, okay, how much do you love football? Like, are you still seeing yourself in that light of, I'm superstar quarterback Deshaun Watson, or are you humbled enough now after everything that you've been through to being willing to accept any role that's given to you? It kind of reminds me, and you both can get this reference as well, as when Allen Iverson arrived at Detroit and he was asked to come off the bench. And because he's Allen Iverson, there was no way in hell he was willing to accept that role. Yeah. Right. And so, like, you just wonder if that's where Deshaun Watson is. And if he's somebody that loves the game of football, wants to stay around the game of football, and wants to be a mentor to another young quarterback and coming in, then okay, cool. But I just don't think that can happen here in the city of Cleveland. I think like both sides probably didn't had enough, and it's probably just best for both sides if both sides agree to move on.
Here's the problem with just moving on is, how do you do that? There's too
much money. Yeah,
it's the money part is just
the money gonna be money though. But like I get that, and that's gonna always be the Achilles heel. But at some point, man, you just got to say, damn, the money. It just do its best, and I think you've seen examples of that elsewhere throughout the NFL at different times, right? Now with Deshaun Watson, in his case, it'll be the largest cap hit probably in NFL history. But you know what though, like, it is what it is sometimes, man. Sometimes, like, you put your money into bad stocks, bad investments, and you don't get the return on investment. The one thing we know about money, man, it come and go. Like, they'll make it back. Like, it'll figure itself out, man. That's how I feel.
It's not the money, it's the cap. Like,
if you cut them, $100 million, you can't fill the team.
Yeah, I'm looking at over the cap right now. If they just cut them, and this is the whole issue with it. You can't just cut them. It's $172 million of dead cap if they cut them this year or before next season. $172 million. The cap is 230 what?
So you formulate a plan to tell them to stay home.
Well,
I'm with you. Like that I'm agreeing with you, Earl. That's I think the eventual outcome.
But here's
the easy separation doesn't exist in this scenario.
I give pushback to this only for one reason. The Cleveland Browns made the decision to go get Deshaun Watson. They made the decision to give him the contract. If Deshaun Watson is a person who is not causing problems, he is not in any trouble, he's going through injury, I don't think that there's a need to send him home. Listen, if you're a player, hey, look, teams make bad decisions on players all the time. If Deshaun Watson is not going to cause no problems, there is no reason to send the precedent for sending somebody home because you made a bad decision on how much money you wanted to give him is, like, to me, I don't like the precedent. And I always say this. Jameis Winston is a strong enough leader, and he understands the game enough that he's going to go in, and if they had to play in the same room, they should be professional enough to understand what the game is. If Deshaun Watson saw Jameis Winston support him as the front runner, then by all means.
That sounds good. That sounds good, G, but we was here last year. Like, all I'm saying is, like, we was here last year, and if that was the case, then the right call would have been to bring Joe Flacco back to be Deshaun Watson's backup and let him be a mentor to him and DTR. And I think I said that at said time when we did one of these shows, right? So the Cleveland Browns had already shown, or somebody inside that organization know, that for as good as that sound and as right as you are, because if you're right, if nobody is causing no issues or no problems, then, that's kind of low-key bully behavior. Don't kick them out the door and send them home. But, like, we done been down this road before, and I just feel like if that was the case, and if that was the temperature of the room, then the Browns would have moved differently from how they moved.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
But
saying?
that
Once
was,
they got
but I think the difference point is, you know, and they talked about it. They're like, okay, well, we're not going to move that way. They came out and said, listen, we're not going to have the same person. We're not going to have the same energy when it comes to Deshaun Watson. We're gonna build our roster as is if Deshaun Watson is part of this roster, but we're not moving things because of Deshaun Watson, or he's not going to get certain treatment. For me, I think sometimes you look. The way you treat it today is not necessarily how you treat it tomorrow. And before, Deshaun Watson was the guy that we're trying to make work. When he got injured, all things were off. All bets were off at that point in time. I think it's a new set of rules. And our whole thing is, I just want the Cleveland Browns, and I think Sean's main point in this was they got to be very concrete in what they're doing at the quarterback position, because they need to build a team around somebody, Jameis Winston or somebody, and do it in a hurry.
When you look at the backup quarterback position, historically speaking, not talking Cleveland Browns, just across the league, if you were to come up with like an archetype of what you want in a backup quarterback, I'm going to give you what I think, and you guys disagree, agree. The skills and the attributes you'd want a prototypical backup quarterback. Take the system out of the equation. I'm just talking generic backup quarterback. Stable, smart, causes no distractions. Is that a fair trio of attributes you would associate with the generic backup quarterback in not just today's NFL, but over the last 2-3 decades?
If I had to cherry pick, because if you get those three things, that would mean that you would get a guy in a backup. All I want to see is a guy that can pick up stuff quickly, which is smart.
Somebody, I was about to say, somebody that can process information fast. That would be my biggest.
Somebody
smart
that understands and gets it, like at a larger,
veteran savvy, understands that. Yeah,
right.
And no distractions.
No distractions, right? So that guy can come in and win you a couple football games.
And you don't have to worry about him. And that's why when and I'm going to go back to go forward, but that's why when Tim Tebow was making his rounds across the NFL after he left the Denver Broncos, even though he didn't bring upon any of the distractions by himself, his sheer presence was a distraction. I just remember going back to when New England signed him, and I was in Boston in college during that time. And despite the fact they still had a Super Bowl caliber roster, they were still winning at an incredible high level. Tom Brady was still the quarterback. All the questions were about Tim Tebow. Why? Because that's what people wanted to talk about. We know how this game works. If Deshaun's in the vicinity, whether he's causing any distractions by his own doing or not, he could be the model citizen in the facility next season, rehabbing, being a great teammate, hyping up everyone else, accepting his role. You know there's going to be daily questions about Deshaun, and that's the part. That's why I just don't think it works. Like in premise G, yes, everything you said, and Earl, you too, was spot on. But we don't live in a fairy tale world like that.
No, we don't.
And if Deshaun's in the building in any capacity, he's going to be the story for better or worse.
You know what? You know, so crazy. And that's why I said this, and it almost came to fruition exactly as I said it. I said, when Deshaun Watson got hurt, I said, watch the microphone, watch the microscope. If you were able to fly under the radar before and you were Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, not no more, because he's gone. He's the magnet. He's where all of the flies go to the light, and he's the first person. Even to this day, Deshaun Watson's been out of the building for a long time. We still have topics, and people bring them up.
Guess what?
We're doing a show right now about Deshaun Watson.
Our biggest clips are still Deshaun Watson based.
If there's jokes and memes on Twitter where they be like, man, Jameis Winston threw that ball in coverage. It's Deshaun Watson's fault. The offensive line didn't block today. Like, so you're right. There's a certain segment that will always reference Deshaun Watson, even if he's in the building. That is
Fresh Prince. Will did it.
Yep,
Will did it.
Yeah.
Yo, it's funny though, because I went crazy on Twitter talking about the same thing earlier today. And I think I think fans right now are blaming each other. You know, it was a lot of talk last night about people, you know, feeling like the game was entertaining and that was enough for them, even though we lost, right? I think a lot of people feel like the media is creating some type of agenda, whatever the case may be. But I think joke is on most people. And I say that with all due respect, joke on y'all, because there's a certain segment of us that try to tell y'all. I know me for one kept telling y'all over and over, man. In football, you need all 11 parts moving in the same direction to have success. And I'm getting to a bigger point with what I'm saying. But since OTAs, all I've heard is Deshaun Watson, Deshaun Watson, Deshaun Watson, Deshaun Watson, as if everything for this season was predicated on if Deshaun Watson played well or not. Right now, we didn't see Jameis Winston put up numbers. Right, you go back to the game last night, 497, 4 touchdowns, but he threw 3 picks, 2 of them resulted in touchdowns. Right, 497, the most passing yards in a single game in franchise history. You go back to the New Orleans games, and he threw for what, over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions.
Almost 400.
It was like 400, and we lose that game.
Yeah.
So you see him putting up numbers, but they're not resulting in wins. Remember when I told y'all that for me, it would always be measured of wins and losses? If Deshaun Watson was putting up the same numbers at the clip that Winston was putting up, and we were still 3-9, we'll still have issues. A lot of people, fans, media included, was so focused on Deshaun Watson, so hyper-focused on Deshaun Watson that we glossed over everything else. The roster was more flawed than what we thought. We underestimated how much the coaching overhaul will have an impact on this football team this year, right? We still realize that there is things that's going on within the organization, a la Paul DePodesta, that, you know, the rumors say like he might be pulling strings one way or another. So all I'm saying is, while we also focused on Deshaun Watson, like everything else in the house is damn near catching fire, and we're not even paying attention to it because we focused on him. And now that he's taken away, you seeing everything else being more exposed, but it's been there right in front of our eyes from the beginning of the damn season.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. There's this level of it, and it's almost like it's like the scarlet letter. It's like, oh, you know, you said Deshaun Watson played well one time. You must wear the scarlet W. Like you said,
or you said he played bad one time. You must be the ultimate hater of all.
You hate Deshaun Watson.
Man, listen,
it's crazy.
Giving that man, listen, if you're a fan or a detractor of Deshaun Watson, I think when you give that man too much energy, too much time, too much attention one way or another, I think is weird. I think it's gotten to a point that because of however you feel about Deshaun Watson one way or another, that all of a sudden he has become more important and above the Cleveland Browns itself, to where most of us has grew up in the city cheering for this team. And it's like everything seems to be, this is the dude that everybody want to hang their hat on one way or another. You got people feeling like that because of whatever reason that, you know, Deshaun Watson might have been treated unfairly, that they can't get past what's going on now because they still want to talk about Deshaun Watson. You had lifelong Browns fans talking about they not cheering for this team no more because of him. This dude lives rent-free one way or another in a lot of people's head. It's crazy.
And as someone who's not from Cleveland, who's only been here for almost 3 years now, which is crazy, I have learned pretty quickly, it really doesn't matter who you are on the field, who you are off the field. If you win games, this city will embrace you. You go back to Jacoby Brissett when he started in the first year they acquired Deshaun for those first 11 games. They had a top 10 offense. We forget about the fact that with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, the Browns had a top 10 offense, but they weren't very good. So no one really bought into the full Jacoby craze. Then we see Flacco come in last year. We obviously know the Flacco craze. Jameis is 2-3 now, but he beat Baltimore and he beat Pittsburgh in 2 incredibly memorable games. And then he's had these weird roller coaster, good stats, bad result situations, and people are not as in as they were on Flacco, but closer to Flacco than they were somewhere else. Deshaun could have had that after beating Baltimore last year, but he got hurt, right? And we never got a chance to, whether it was this year, whether it was last year, whether it was the 6 games he played to end the 2022 season, see that sustained winning in games that mattered. I know he was, 4-1 as a starter last year. I'm not taking that away from him, but if he had beaten Baltimore, or if he beats Baltimore and then follows it up with another win, then it escalates to a level that, like, everyone would have gotten behind. And I think that's the one thing, and injuries be damned, you can't predict them. It's unfortunate. That took away Deshaun's chance to, I think, connect with this city like some of these other guys have.
So even the premise, and you are correct in the premise, the thing I go back to, and I know this has kind of devolved into a thing, but I think it's a cool conversation. the thing that I have a problem with is because I'm a guy who played football the majority of his life. I played offensive, defensive line. I understand that, it takes a team effort, and there are certain things that people do that create winning football that will never be talked about or seen. I guess the problem I have with the Browns fandom at this point is somewhere, I think in the maybe the 2010s, somewhere around there, we had been starved for a quarterback so much that the fan base became not Browns fans, it became cheerleaders of the quarterback. And it's like, okay, I know we don't have a franchise quarterback, and we come up with this long list of the names, and we've seen that ad nauseum. But you get to a point where it's like you started having people that like were so ideology wise on quarterbacks. Like there was a Colt McCoy cult, there was a Brian Hoyer cult, then it was there was the Manziels, and then you had Baker, and then it really went to a cult. I mean, it jumped through the roof. I had people who work in this industry that worked for the Browns radio network. They're like, I'm gonna buy a Baker Mayfield Panthers jersey, and at that point, it was like, people were talking about it as if the Browns were the Baker Mayfields instead of you rooting for the name on the hat, on the jersey. Then when he left, we were like, okay, we got to find somebody else. And then another savior came riding in supposedly on a steed. And this time it was Deshaun Watson. But we forget, we still had a whole lot of people that was displaced, that was upset that the last cult hero was here. So it was like, you had this, and now it's to a point. We had Flacco, and he had his pageantry, and now you have Jameis Winston. For me, I just hope that we can get back to a point where it's not about the quarterback. It's about who is the Cleveland Browns, what do they do, and then they win football games. Not who you riding with.
Hey, G, remember when it was at his height though? So Mike, Brian Hoyer is from here, right? So when Brian Hoyer was the starter and people was wanting to see Brandon Wheaton, man, people from Northeast Ohio that was hearing other people talking about bench Brian Hoyer, they was not having that.
They was going crazy. People talking about they had Saint Ignatius on TV every week. I mean, it was tough, man. You had people that wanted, when Hoyer was playing well, we had people that was like, nah, we want Johnny. We want Johnny football. We ain't trying to hear none of this.
Cool. Always want the next shiny object. And it's not just Cleveland. That's the case.
We've been doing this for like, this been 14 years in a row. We've been doing this exact same stuff.
I'll say this because I know we got a wrap, and this came up in another conversation earlier. Man, I cover the Browns, but I'm a lifelong Browns fan. See, I ain't no former, lifelong high school, college athlete. I'm just a fan, and I ended up in this seat. And I know the laundry list of quarterbacks. This is where I've always been with it. I don't care who the quarterback is, how the quarterback was acquired, and how the other quarterback got took up out of here. At the end of the day, the fan is me is, can this dude help us win the Super Bowl? Yes, okay, cool, sign me up. That's who I'm going to ride for. Because at the end of the day, man, I've been a fan so long. I've seen so many different quarterbacks come and go. White, black, tall, short, young, old, all of them, right? Yep. So it's like, to me, I can care less about anything, but are you good enough to help this team win? And if you are, I'm on board with it. If not, then guess what, man? We just going to keep trying until we find that dude. It's just that simple. That's where I'm at. And before I start covering this team, the fandom in me used to be a little bit more emotionally invested in it. But like, my emotional investment is I just want to see my favorite team win. And I don't give a damn who the starting quarterback is. I honest to God don't. I don't care.
You look at every major college in America, every professional football team. The reality is, if you have a quarterback, you know it. And if you don't, you're in the never-ending search to find one. And right now, the Browns have found something to keep an eye on in Jameis. Is he the full long-term answer? We'll have a better answer in 5 weeks as the season progresses. But they do know, whether it's Jameis for a bridge or whoever, they're going to have to find someone long-term to man that position and hopefully bring Cleveland its first Super Bowl championship in the modern era. For G. Bush, for Earl, I'm Mikey McNuggets. We appreciate you tuning into this UCSS Bleacher Report collab, and we'll see you guys on the postgame show on Sunday.
Go Browns.
Peace.